paparazzi flashbulbs felt like tiny explosions, illuminating a betrayal seen by the world. Julian Thorne, a man who built an empire on illusion, stood front row at Paris Fashion Week, his arm wrapped around a supermodel. He thought he was the king of the world, untouchable in his wealth and arrogance. He thought his pregnant wife, Isabella, was at home, naive and obedient. But Julian made one fatal mistake. He didn't just bring his mistress to the biggest fashion event of the year. He brought her to a show at a house that his wife secretly owned. The trap was set, and the humiliation would be priceless. The glass walls of the 80th floor penthouse on Park Avenue were supposed to showcase the world, but for Isabella Thorne, they felt like a cage. New York glittered below, a silent, indifferent ocean of light. At 34, Isabella was the epitome of the millionaire's wife stereotype. Elegant, quiet, and for the past 6 months, visibly pregnant. The baby, a girl, was a small, insistent flutter beneath her silk blouse, a secret alliance in this cold, sterile home. Her husband, Julian Thorne, was a man carved from ambition and polished by arrogance. He had built Thorne Industries from a single, ruthless real estate deal into a sprawling conglomerate. He was loud where she was quiet, public where she was private. He loved the idea of Isabella, her old money lineage, her grace, her placid beauty. But he had never, not once, bothered to look deeper. He saw her as his most beautiful acquisition, and acquisitions in his mind did not have opinions. "You're sure you're all right with me going?" he asked, not looking up from the platinum clasp of his Louis Vuitton carry-on. The question was a formality, a sterile performance of concern. "Paris Fashion Week is vital for the brand, darling," he continued, answering himself. "We're trying to broker a lifestyle partnership. This Devereux house, it's the hottest ticket. Getting in with them means Thorne Industries breaks into the European luxury market. It's important." Isabella traced the rim of her chamomile tea. "Of course, Julian. Business is business." Her voice was smooth, betraying nothing. He finally looked at her, his eyes scanning her bump with a flicker of something she couldn't name. Pride, or perhaps just annoyance at the disruption. "Good. Don't, overdo it. The doctor said you need rest." He kissed the air near her cheek, the scent of his sharp, expensive cologne, Tom Ford's Oud Wood, assaulting her senses. "My driver is downstairs. I'll be back Friday." He left. The heavy penthouse door clicked shut with the sound of a vault. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. Isabella sat unmoving for a full minute. Then she placed her teacup down, the china making a sharp clink on the marble coaster. She walked past the cold, museum-like living room, past the sterile white kitchen, and into her private study. Julian believed this was where she managed her little charities and organized dinner parties. He had never once opened the laptop that sat on her antique mahogany desk. Isabella sat, entered a 32-character encrypted password, and watched the screen flicker to life. The interface wasn't email. It was a secure terminal linked to servers in Zurich, London, and Singapore. This was her world. This was Aura Capital. Isabella was not just an old money heiress. Her grandfather hadn't just left her a trust fund. He had left her a controlling stake in a diversified global investment firm, which she had quietly, brilliantly, and ruthlessly quadrupled in the last decade. She was anonymous, known to the financial world only as Aura, a ghost investor who moved markets. Julian Thorne, with his flashy, debt-leveraged Thorne Industries, was worth perhaps 900 million on paper. Isabella, in liquid, secured and growing assets, was worth over 5 billion. She had funded his first major skyscraper, anonymously through a shell corporation. She owned a significant portion of his debt. She had let him play provider because, in the beginning, she had loved his ambition. Now, she merely observed it, like a scientist studying a particularly aggressive species of mold. For the past 2 months, she had known about Katerina Petrova. The affair wasn't a suspicion, it was a data point, confirmed by the private security team she had on permanent retainer. Katerina was a 22-year-old influencer-turned-model, a woman whose entire existence was curated for Instagram, all sharp angles and manufactured pouts. Isabella pulled up a file. It was the passenger manifest for Julian's private jet. 2 names, Julian Thorne and Katerina Petrova. A slow, cold anger, methodical and sharp, moved through her. It wasn't the jealousy of a woman scorned, it was the fury of a CEO whose partner had just attempted a deeply stupid and public embezzlement. He wasn't just cheating on his wife, he was risking the Thorne Industries brand, and by extension, her assets. She opened another file, the one labeled Project Paris. Julian believed he was going to Paris to woo Maison Devereux. He had been bragging for weeks about his inn, how he was going to charm the legendary, reclusive designer, Pierre Dubois. He was a fool. Maison Devereux, a storied French fashion house, had been on the brink of bankruptcy 6 months prior. Aura Capital, Isabella, had swept in and bought it outright. Not just invested, bought it. The entire house, the archives, the ateliers, the debt. Pierre Dubois wasn't the owner. He was her new, very grateful, and very well-paid employee. Julian wasn't going to Paris to broker a deal. He was flying into a meticulously constructed cage of his own making. Isabella looked at the manifest again. Katerina Petrova. He was taking this child to her show. The arrogance was breathtaking. He was planning to sit front row at her event, funded by her money, with his mistress on his arm, while his pregnant wife sat at home. A thin, dangerous smile touched Isabella's lips. She pulled up a secure chat. Her Paris team was online. I. Thorne. The guest list for the Devereux show needs an update. 2 additions, Julian Thorne and Katerina Petrova. Paris Ops. Madame? I thought the instructions were clear. He was not to be invited. I. Thorne. Change of plans. I want him there, and I want her there. Make sure every major press outlet confirms their attendance. Seat them. Somewhere conspicuous. Row 3. By the pillar. Paris Ops. Understood? And your arrangements? Aye. Thorne. I'll be arriving tomorrow. The private apartment at Place des Vosges. No hotels, no trace. Only you and Pierre are to know I am in the city. Paris Ops. Bien sûr, madame. The trap is set. Isabella closed the laptop. She stood, walking to the glass wall and placing a hand on her stomach. The baby kicked, a small, strong reminder of what was real. He thinks we are weak, little one, she whispered to the glittering city. He thinks we are just a pretty decoration. Men like Julian. They never see the person right in front of them. They only see the reflection of what they want. She looked down at the street, where Julian's car was just a red speck disappearing into the flow of traffic. Paris, she said, is going to be so very educational. Paris was a performance, and Julian Thorne intended to be its star. The Thorne Industries private jet, a sleek Gulfstream G650, touched down at Le Bourget Airport under a crisp grey sky. The moment the cabin door opened, Katerina Petrova was on. "Bonjour, Paris," she shrieked, already filming herself with her phone, a diamond-encrusted monstrosity. She pouted her lips, angled the camera down her tiny, designer-ripped top, and blew a kiss. "Your girl has arrived, and look who I brought." She swung the camera to Julian, who smiled, indulgent. "Katerina, baby, put that down. We're here for business, "It's all business, baby," she cooed, snuggling into his side. "My followers live for this. They need to see how a real boss travels." Julian's business was, in his mind, already a roaring success. He had Katerina on his arm, a woman who made men half his age stare, and he was in Paris to conquer the luxury market. He felt invincible. The air smelled of kerosene and possibility. A black Maybach S-Class was waiting on the tarmac, a courtesy he believed his team had arranged. In reality, it was arranged by Isabella's team, tracking his tail numbers. She needed him delivered to his destination with maximum comfort and zero suspicion. They swept through the city, Katerina filming the Arc de Triomphe, Julian on the phone, barking orders at his New York office. "I don't care what the zoning board says. You tell them I'm meeting with the Devereux Group. That'll get them moving." They arrived at the Ritz Paris on Place Vendôme. This was Julian's temple. He loved the unapologetic, old-world opulence. He had booked the Suite Impériale, a sprawling residence of marble, gold leaf, and silk. "Oh, Julian, it's everything," Katerina gasped, doing a spinning twirl in the grand salon. "It's bigger than my old apartment, my entire building." "Only the best, Kat," he said, tipping the bellman an obscene amount. He felt a swell of pride. This is what money was for. This was power. Katerina immediately began unzipping her half-dozen suitcases, a volcano of neon fur, sheer fabrics, and logo-stamped leather exploding across the priceless antiques. "Now," she announced, "what's first? I need to be seen at Coste, and we have to get a shot on Avenue Montaigne. I need content." "Tonight we're laying low," Julian said, loosening his tie. "We'll go to L'Ambroise, quiet, exclusive. Tomorrow the real work begins. The Chanel show in the morning. Then we prepare for the Devereux Gala." "The Devereux? Oh my God, everyone is talking about that show." Katerina buzzed, her eyes wide. "They say it's impossible to get into, that the new investor is some mystery-shrouded billionaire." Julian chuckled, pouring himself a cognac from the crystal decanter. "Don't worry, they've been begging me to come. This partnership, it's a done deal. They need my brand, my American reach. By the time we leave, that mystery investor will be eating out of my hand." Katerina looked at him, with an adoration so total it was almost blinding. "You're a king, Julian, a total king." He believed her. 20 minutes away, in the quiet, aristocratic embrace of Le Marais, a different arrival was taking place. A black, unadorned DS9 sedan, deliberately chosen for its anonymity, pulled into a private cobblestone courtyard off the Place des Vosges. Isabella Thorne stepped out. She wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a simple chignon. She was dressed in tailored black trousers, a soft cashmere knit, and comfortable Belgian loafers. She looked less like a billionaire and more like an art curator or a university professor. The doorman, the only staff member on site who knew her face, bowed slightly. "Welcome, madame. The apartment is prepared." "Thank you, Jean-Paul." Her apartment was the antithesis of the Ritz. Where Julian's suite screamed wealth, Isabella's whispered it. The walls were lined with books and original art, a small, quiet Modigliani, a sketch by Giacometti. The windows overlooked the tranquil manicured square. It was a fortress of serenity. Her Paris team, a sharp-suited woman named Sylvie, her chief European counsel, and a grizzled man named Mark, her head of security, were waiting. "He's at the Ritz," Sylvie reported, opening a sleek tablet. "Suite Impériale. He's booked L'Ambroise for 9 p.m. "Good. Mark, is the friction plan in place?" Isabella asked, accepting a glass of still water. "Yes, madame," Mark said, his voice a low rumble. "The system-wide banking glitch is scheduled for 9:15 p.m. It will affect only the credit cards linked to his personal accounts and the primary Thorn Industries executive line. His debit cards will still function, but with a new, significantly lower daily limit. Enough for a taxi, not enough for a couture gown. Or a hotel bill, Sylvie added, a small grim smile playing on her lips. He will be inconvenienced, but not stranded, Isabella clarified. This is not about cruelty. It is about control. He needs to feel the ground shift beneath him. Just a little. And the restaurant? I took the liberty, Sylvie said. I spoke to the owner. L'Ambroisie is unfortunately experiencing a plumbing emergency. They will be closed for the evening. Their reservation system, accidentally, failed to notify them. Mr. Thorn will arrive, with his guest, to a dark restaurant. Excellent. Isabella sat down, the posture of a monarch settling onto a throne. And Katerina Petrova? Sylvie's expression soured. She's prolific. Already tagged her location at the Ritz. Our digital team is monitoring. She's exactly what we thought. Loud, indiscreet, and utterly fixated on content. She is a tool, Isabella said, not unkindly. She is the spotlight Julian has chosen to shine on himself. Let her. Boost her signal. I want everyone to see them together. When the time comes, I want the humiliation to be perfectly, publicly documented. By his own guest. And the show, madame? Pierre is ready, Isabella said. The final collection is perfection. He has channeled all his gratitude into the work. She paused, looking out the window. He's also prepared the other item I requested. The final piece? Sylvie asked. Yes, Isabella said, a hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. The one I'll be wearing. The team looked at her, a new fierce respect in their eyes. This was no longer just about business. It was about a public execution, staged on the most famous runway in the world. Let them have their night, Isabella said, turning back to the room. Let them go to Chanel. Let them get their picture taken. Let him feel like the king. The higher he climbs tonight, the further he will have to fall. The Grand Palais was a cathedral of chaos. Paris Fashion Week was in full, frenzied swing. Outside, a tempest of street-style photographers, influencers, and fashion devotees surged against the barricades, all desperate for a glimpse of the spectacle within. This was the Chanel show, the 11 a.m. tentpole of the week. Julian and Katerina's Maybach pulled up, and the effect was instantaneous. The photographers swarmed, their lenses like the hungry eyes of insects. "It's Kat Petrova," one shouted. "Who is she with?" Katerina emerged from the car. She hadn't just dressed for the show, she had dressed for war. She wore a Chanel-inspired, but not actual Chanel, micro-tweed skirt, a sheer black top that left nothing to the imagination, and thigh-high, acid-green Balenciaga boots. She was a walking, pouting explosion of new money tackiness. Julian, by contrast, was immaculate in a bespoke Zegna suit. He put a possessive hand on her bare waist, guiding her through the scrum, beaming with pride. He was 52, and his companion was 22. In his world, this was the ultimate trophy. "Julian, darling, Julian Thorn," a reporter from Women's Wear Daily recognized him. "Big week for you. Are you here for the Devereaux show?" "We're in town for some very exciting meetings," Julian said smoothly, the perfect corporate soundbite. "Just enjoying the genius of Karl's successor while we're here." He had forgotten the current designer's name. They were swept inside. The set was, as always, magnificent, a perfect recreation of a sun-drenched Riviera promenade. Julian, holding his invitation, expected to be led to the coveted AA front row, beside the A-list actresses and the magazine editors-in-chief. A polite, severe-looking woman in Chanel black scanned his QR code. "Ah, Monsieur Thorne. Welcome. This way, please." She led them past the front row, past the second row. She stopped at the third row, in a section slightly to the left of the main runway. "Here you are." Julian stopped. "I'm sorry, there must be a mistake. My seat's a front row." The woman gave him a smile that did not reach her eyes. "This is the seat assigned, monsieur. Please enjoy the show." She vanished before he could protest. Katerina's face tightened. "Third row. Julian, what is this?" It's just a clerical error, baby," he said, his voice tight. "It doesn't matter. We're here." But it did matter. He could feel the eyes of the people in the actual front row. He recognized Harrison Ford's wife, a Japanese rock star, and 3 different duchesses. And they were all looking, or pointedly not looking, at Katerina's neon boots. The show began, a blur of beautiful clothes. But Julian couldn't focus. He was seething. His PR team would hear about this. This was an insult. He didn't know that 2 sections over, hidden in a private balcony reserved for the brand's most valued and discreet clients, Isabella sat with a cup of tea. She watched them. She watched Julian's simmering anger and Katerina's sullen pout. She had made one call to a friend on the Chanel board. "As a favor," she had murmured, "seat him where he can be seen, but not celebrated." After the show, Katerina was desperate to recover. "We have to get a picture with someone," she hissed, dragging Julian toward the exit. She spotted a woman she recognized, Camilla Moron, the actress. "Oh my God, Cammy!" Katerina gushed, holding up her phone for a selfie. Camilla, deep in conversation with the designer, gave her a blank, confused look. "I'm sorry, do I?" "It's Kat Petrova." "Oh, right," Camilla said, offering a tight, professional smile, before turning her back, dismissing her completely. The snub was so fast, so sharp, it was surgical. Katerina's face burned crimson. Julian grabbed her arm. "Let's go, now!" They fled the Grand Palais, the photographer's flashes now feeling hostile. That bitch!" Katerina spat as the Maybach door slammed. "Who does she think she is?" "She's nobody," Julian snapped, his facade cracking. He was furious. This wasn't how the day was supposed to go. He decided to fix it. He would take Katerina shopping. He would buy her silence, buy her happiness. "We'll go to Avenue Montaigne," he declared. "You want Chanel? We'll buy you actual Chanel. We'll buy the whole store." They arrived at the glittering flagship store. Katerina's mood brightened instantly. She was a tornado of desire, pulling bags, shoes, and tweed jackets from the shelves. "I want this, and oh, this, in black." The sales associate, a rail-thin woman with an air of aristocratic judgment, piled the items at the register. The total came to $112,000. "A good start," Julian said, feeling his power return. He handed the associate his black American Express Centurion card. The associate swiped it. A small, discreet beep sounded. She swiped it again. Her perfectly plucked eyebrows rose a fraction of a millimeter. "Monsieur," she said, her voice dropping to a mortified whisper. "It appears there is a problem with the card." Julian laughed. "That's impossible. Run it again." "I have, monsieur. Twice. It is décliné." Declined. The word hung in the air, cold and sharp. "What?" Julian's voice was a low growl. "That's ridiculous. It's a no-limit card." "Perhaps you would like to try another?" the associate suggested, her eyes flicking to Katerina's neon boots. His face hardening, Julian pulled out his Thorne Industries corporate card. "Here. Use this." She swiped it. Beep. Decline. The blood drained from Julian's face. This wasn't an error. This was something else. Katerina was watching him, her adoring smile replaced by a look of confusion and appraisal. "Julian?" she asked, her voice small. "It's the international signal," he stammered, grabbing the cards back. "It's a security flag. I'll call the bank." He shoved his wallet into his pocket. "We'll come back," he said to the associate, who was already discreetly putting the $30,000 handbag back on the shelf. They walked out of the store. The bright, sunny afternoon on Avenue Montaigne suddenly felt oppressive. "What the hell was that, Julian?" Katerina demanded, her voice losing its baby doll sweetness. "It's nothing," he barked, pulling out his phone. "It's a bank error. I'll have someone fired for this." He tried to call his private banker in New York. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried his office. He tried his CFO. Voicemail. Voicemail. A cold, unfamiliar sensation trickled down his spine. It felt like friction. For the first time in 20 years, the world was not effortlessly smoothing itself before him. He finally got his assistant on the line. "What the hell is wrong with my cards?" "Oh, Mr. Thorne," she sounded panicked. There's a system-wide glitch. Something about an international server. They're saying no one's corporate lines are working in Europe. They're working on it." It sounded plausible, but deep in his gut, Julian felt a knot of dread. "Fine," he snapped. "Wire $200,000 to the Ritz concierge. I'll use cash." He hung up and forced a smile for Katerina. "See? A stupid server glitch. All fixed. Let's go back to the hotel. We need to rest for the Devereaux Gala anyway. That is what we're here for. That's the main event." Katerina looked only partially convinced, but she nodded. As they rode back in silence, Julian stared out at the Seine. He couldn't shake the feeling. The third-row seat, the declined cards, the silent phones. It felt less like a glitch and more like a message. He thought of Isabella, back in New York, pregnant and docile. He pictured her watering her orchids in their silent penthouse. It was impossible. She wouldn't know how to do something like this. She didn't even know what a credit default swap was. He shook his head, dismissing the thought as absurd. It was a glitch. It had to be. The evening of the Maison Devereaux Gala was electric. The show was being held in the inner courtyard of the Louvre, a temporary, glass-like structure built over the IM Pei pyramid, making it look as though the models would be walking on water and light. This wasn't just a fashion show, it was a coronation. The Vogue headline that morning had read, "The Rebirth, How a Mystery Angel Saved Devereaux." Everyone who was anyone was there. Kate Blanchett, Timothée Chalamet, the entire K-pop group Blackpink, and a dozen European royals. The anticipation was so thick you could taste it. Julian, his finances restored, Isabella had allowed the $200,000 wire transfer to go through, felt his confidence return. He had cash, he had his suit, and he had Katerina, who, after a day of frantic cash-bought shopping, was back to being his adoring kitten. She was wearing a vintage fire-engine red Versace dress circa 1995. It was spectacular, but it was also wrong. It was a look-at-me dress for a look-at-them event. She looked like she was going to the Grammys, not a couture show. "This is it, baby," Julian murmured, adjusting his bow tie in the Maybach. "Tonight, we own this town." He had his physical invitation, a heavy vellum card embossed with the Devereaux gold crest. He'd had his assistant call the Devereaux PR team 4 times that day to confirm his seats. "Front row center," his assistant had assured him. They said to apologize for the Chanel mix-up, that it was a grave error, and you are their guest of honor. Julian smiled. That was more like it. They stepped out onto the cobblestones. The flashbulbs were a solid wall of light. Katerina posed, blowing kisses, but the press was distracted. They were screaming for Zendaya, who had arrived just behind them. Julian and Katerina were shuffled along the black carpet, past the major photo ops to the entrance. Julian presented his invitation to the PR girl, the same severe, elegant type from the Chanel show, only this one held an iPad. She scanned his invitation, her brow furrowed. She scanned it again. "Monsieur Thorne," she said, her voice flat. I'm afraid I don't see your name on the list." Julian's smile froze. "What? No, that's impossible. Look again. Thorne. Julian Thorne. Guest of honor." "I have looked, monsieur. 3 times." She showed him the screen. His name was not there. "This is outrageous." Julian's voice rose, drawing stares. "I am Julian Thorne. I am here to meet with your CEO. My office confirmed 4 times." "Perhaps your guest is on the list?" the woman asked, her eyes sliding to Katerina. "What is the name?" "Katerina Petrova," Katerina said, her voice trembling. The woman typed. "Ah, oui. Mademoiselle Petrova, we have you." Julian let out a breath of relief. "See? A simple... Wait, what?" "We have 1 seat for Katerina Petrova," the woman said, "but not for you, monsieur. I'm so sorry." The ground fell away from Julian's feet. Katerina was invited, but he wasn't. Katerina, an Instagram model, was on the list for the most exclusive couture show in the world, and he, Julian Thorne, was not. This is... You don't understand." Julian was sputtering, his face turning a dark, dangerous red. "I am her guest. She is my +1. "The invitation is non-transferable, monsieur," the woman said, her voice like ice. "Mademoiselle Petrova may enter. You, however, cannot." Katerina looked from Julian to the entrance, her mind visibly calculating. Go in without him and get the pictures, the prestige, or stay with him, her king, who was currently being barred at the door like a common gate crasher. "Julian, do something," she hissed, her panic rising. Julian, in a move of pure desperation, pulled out his wallet. He slipped a $500 note from his clip. "Look," he whispered. Let's fix this. There's a seat for me. I know there is." The woman looked at the $500 note in his hand and then at his face, with a look of such profound, acidic pity that Julian felt as though he'd been slapped. She didn't even bother to respond. She simply turned to the next guest. "Madame Al-Fayed, welcome. So wonderful to see you." He had been dismissed. He was Julian Thorne, and he had been dismissed. The paparazzi, sensing blood in the water, were starting to edge closer, their lenses focusing on the altercation. Wait! A man in a headset bustled over. "My apologies. A terrible, terrible mistake, Monsieur Thorne. Of course we have you. The system is just... It is a new system." Julian's relief was so profound, he nearly sagged. "Thank you. I knew it." This way," the man said, bustling them inside, past the threshold, into the magnificent glass structure. "We have saved your seats. Such an honor to have you." Julian shot a triumphant look back at the PR girl, who ignored him. The man led them. Past the front row, glowing with A-listers. Past the second row, filled with major editors and buyers. He stopped at the third row, behind a massive, structural support pillar. The seats were technically in the venue, but they offered a view of almost nothing except the backs of other people's heads and a sliver of the runway. They were, without a doubt, the worst seats in the entire 500-person venue. "Here you are," the man said with a bright, false smile. "Enjoy the show." Julian stood, staring at the pillar. It was a monument to his humiliation. This is... "Julian, sit down," Katerina hissed, mortified. People were staring. She yanked him into the seat and slumped down, pulling her phone out, pretending to be texting, desperate to hide her face. This was worse than the Chanel show. This was a targeted execution. Julian sat, his body rigid, his hands clenched so tightly on his knees, his knuckles were white. He couldn't breathe. He recognized the man sitting in front of him. Bernard Arnault, the CEO of LVMH, the richest man in the world. And he was sitting behind a post. "Someone," Julian whispered, his voice shaking with a rage so profound it was almost silent, "is going to be fired for this. Someone is going to be destroyed." Katerina didn't answer. She was frantically texting, likely to her agent, complaining. She hadn't looked at him once since they sat down. The lights went down. A single, haunting cello note filled the air. The show was beginning. Julian Thorne, the man who thought he was coming to conquer Paris, sat in the dark, hidden behind a concrete pillar, a spectre at the feast. And for the first time, a truly terrifying thought entered his mind. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. But who? Who in Paris had this kind of power? Who would dare? The show was, by all accounts, a masterpiece. Even from his compromised vantage point, Julian could feel the energy. Pierre Dubois, freed from the constraints of commercialism by his new, anonymous benefactor, had created a collection of pure, breathtaking art. It was a hymn to tailoring, a symphony of fabric. The models didn't just walk, they floated. The theme was resurrection, and the clothes were ethereal, powerful, and defiant. The press, crammed into the standing room, was weeping. The buyers were already scribbling frantic orders. Bernard Arnault himself, in the row ahead, nodded slowly, a rare sign of profound approval. Julian saw none of it. He was a statue of pure fury, his mind racing. He was plotting lawsuits. He was imagining the phone calls he would make, the careers he would end. He would buy this house, just to fire the woman at the door. Katerina, sensing the shift in power, had physically angled herself away from him. She was craning her neck around the pillar, filming snippets of the show for her Instagram, her face a mask of strained enthusiasm. She was already distancing herself, creating a separate narrative. The finale came. A bride, not in white, but in a gown of spun gold that seemed to be woven from light itself, walked the runway as the cello music swelled. The room erupted. Standing ovation. The lights came up. The applause was deafening. A moment later, the designer himself, Pierre Dubois, a man with a shock of white hair and the dramatic soul of a poet, walked out. He was weeping, bowing, blowing kisses. He stepped to a small, discreet microphone at the head of the runway. "Thank you, he cried, his French accent thick with emotion. You have given my life back to me. But I didn't do this alone. For a year, we, Maison Devereux, we were in the dark. We were finis." The crowd quieted, listening intently. "And then," Pierre continued, placing a hand over his heart, "an angel arrived. An investor who did not ask for logos, who did not ask for handbags, who did not ask for see now, buy now. He spat the words like a curse. She asked only for art. She asked us to dream again." Julian rolled his eyes. "Oh, get on with it," he muttered. "It's probably some dusty, 90-year-old Swiss heiress." "She is the visionary," Pierre declared, his voice booming. "She is the new heart of Maison Devereux. She has been my collaborator, my partner, and my savior. And tonight, she has agreed to finally step out of the shadows. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the new owner of the House of Devereux." A hush fell. This was it. The mystery benefactor, the Vogue headline. Julian, despite himself, leaned forward, craning his neck. This was the person he had to charm, the person he had to fix this humiliation with. "Please, welcome to the runway. Mrs. Isabella Thorne." The name hit Julian like a physical blow. He stopped breathing. What? It was it had to be a different Isabella Thorne, a common name. And then she walked out. She emerged from the backstage darkness, stepping into the blinding white light of the runway. It was his wife, but it was not his wife. This was not the quiet, placid woman he had left in New York. This Isabella was radiant, terrifying, and powerful. She was 6 months pregnant, and she wasn't hiding it. She was featuring it. She wore a custom Devereux gown of midnight blue velvet, cut to drape perfectly over her stomach, making her look like a goddess of the harvest, a symbol of creation and terrifying power. Her hair was down, sleek and shining. Her eyes, sweeping the room, were not the soft, docile eyes of his wife. They were the sharp, assessing, and utterly cold eyes of a CEO. The room exploded. The sound was a physical force. The photographers, screaming her name, scrambled over each other, their flashes a violent, blinding strobe. Forbes and Bloomberg reporters, instantly recognizing the name of the Aura investor, were already filing the story from their phones. Julian Thorne didn't move. He was paralyzed, his mind a blue screen of death. The champagne glass in his hand slipped, shattering on the floor. But he didn't notice. "Isabella?" he whispered. It was a question, a prayer, a curse. Katerina Petrovna beside him went pale as a sheet. Her phone clattered from her hand. She looked at Julian, her eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. She finally understood. She understood the third-row seats, the declined cards, the pillar. This wasn't an insult. This was a show. And they were the clowns. Isabella took the microphone from Pierre. Her voice, amplified, was calm and clear, cutting through the din. "Thank you, Pierre," she said, her voice betraying no emotion. "Your work is, as always, a gift." She turned, her gaze sweeping the front row, acknowledging the applause. And then her eyes moved, past the front row, past the second. Her gaze traveled, targeted and precise, until it locked directly onto her husband's. She found him, hiding behind his pillar of shame. She held his gaze. There was no anger in her eyes, no sadness. There was nothing. It was the look a queen gives a court jester who has just told a singularly unfunny joke. Then she smiled. A small, brilliant, and utterly devastating smile. She raised her microphone. "I have always believed," she said, her voice echoing through the silent, watching room, "that true luxury is not about what you buy. It is about what you own." She let the words hang in the air. A public execution. "But more than that," she continued, her gaze finally releasing him, "it is about knowing your worth, and never, ever, letting anyone else define it for you." She placed one hand on her stomach. "This collection, Resurrection, is dedicated to all the women who have been told to stay in the shadows, to stay quiet, to be manageable." Her eyes found Julian's one last time. As you can see, the shadows are where the real work gets done. She handed the microphone back to Pierre. The applause that followed was not just an ovation. It was a revolution. Isabella Thorne, the quiet wife, the ghost investor, had just announced herself to the world, not with a press release, but with a public decapitation. Julian finally, mechanically, stood up. He had to get to her. He had to... What? Yell? Apologize? Understand? Katerina was already gone. In the chaos of the applause, she had grabbed her purse and, with the survival instinct of a rat on a sinking ship, had bolted for the exit. Julian didn't even notice. He pushed his way through the crowd, shoving past editors and buyers, trying to get to the backstage entrance. "Isabella!" he yelled, his voice hoarse. "Isabella!" He reached the black curtain. A wall of muscle, in the form of 2 massive security guards, blocked his path. It was Mark, Isabella's head of security. "I'm sorry, sir," Mark rumbled, his voice polite but final. "This is a private area." That's my wife!" Julian screamed, his face purple. "I am Julian Thorne." "I know who you are, Mr. Thorne," Mark said, unmoving. "And Mrs. Thorne has left strict instructions. You are not on the list." The aftermath was not a slow burn. It was an inferno. Before Julian had even made it back to the Ritz, fleeing the Louvre on foot, as his Maybach driver, also on Isabella's payroll, had regrettably been forced to move by the gendarmerie. The internet had exploded. The story was too perfect. Forbes. The ghost is a goddess. Isabella Thorne, head of Aura Capital, revealed as secret buyer of Maison Devereux. Bloomberg. Thorne versus Thorne. How Isabella Thorne's Aura Capital quietly became the primary creditor for Thorne Industries. Vogue. The ultimate revenge, Isabella Thorne steals Paris Fashion Week and her husband's company. Page 6. He's torn to pieces. Julian Thorne's mistress, Kat Petrova, spotted fleeing Devereux Gala after wife Isabella's shocking reveal. Julian stumbled into the Suite Imperiale, his bow tie undone, his face ashen. The room was empty. Katerina was gone. All her neon furs, her logo-stamped bags, her content had vanished. She had taken the $200,000 in cash from the hotel safe and disappeared. He was, for the first time in his life, completely and utterly alone. His phone, which had been ominously silent, suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree. It was not his banker. It was his board of directors. It was his CFO. It was his legal team. He answered the call from his CFO, a man named Marcus. "Julian, my God, Julian, what is happening?" Marcus sounded hysterical. "I'm looking at our debt covenants. The SPV we used for the Hudson Yards project. It's not owned by a bank in Singapore. Julian, it's Aura Capital." Julian sank onto the gold leaf settee. He said nothing. "That's not all," Marcus continued, his voice cracking. "The revolving credit line for the Miami expansion? That's Aura. The bridging loan for the London Tower? Aura. Julian, she owns us. Your wife. She owns all of our debt. And the Devereux Gala. Julian, her appearance just triggered the key man clause. Her, not you. She's positioned herself as the financial backing of the entire brand." "What does that mean, Marcus?" Julian asked, his voice dead. It means she can call our loans. All of them. Right now, she can dissolve the company, Julian. She can take everything. The planes, the buildings, everything. She's been the silent partner this whole time. She was your capital?" The revelation settled on Julian. It wasn't just that she was rich. It was that her riches were the foundation for his. He had been building his empire of glass and steel on her mountain of solid gold, and he had never once bothered to look down. He thought of all the times he had patronized her. "Don't worry your pretty little head about the financials, darling. My world it's too complex. You wouldn't understand. Just be beautiful, Isabella. That's all I need you to do." He had treated a queen like a concubine. He had treated a nuclear physicist like a child. The arrogance of it, the profound, world-ending stupidity of it, crushed him. He had been cheating on his wife, with his banker. A sharp, barking laugh escaped his lips. It was the sound of a man breaking. He dropped the phone. It clattered on the marble floor. He looked around the Suite Imperiale. He suddenly realized the reservation, too, had probably been secured by her. He was a guest in her life. His phone buzzed again. A text message. It wasn't from a banker or a lawyer. It was from a New York number he didn't recognize. He opened it. It was a single PDF attachment. He clicked on it. The document loaded. It was a sonogram. A 3D image of a baby, clear and perfect, its tiny hand balled into a fist. Below the image was a single line of text. She has your eyes, but she will have my name. The cruelty of it. The precision. She wasn't just taking his company. She wasn't just taking his dignity. She was taking his legacy. She was erasing him. He crumpled, falling from the settee to his knees on the plush, unforgiving carpet of the suite he couldn't pay for. He, Julian Thorne, the king, was nothing. He was a footnote in her story. The morning light in the Place des Vosges was soft and forgiving, bathing the antique-filled apartment in a pale, rosy glow. Isabella sat by the window, a cup of decaffeinated café au lait in her hand, watching Parisians walk their dogs in the quiet square below. She had slept for 8 hours, deeply and peacefully. The Devereaux show was the #1 trending topic worldwide. Orders had crashed their servers. Her investment had already returned 300% on paper. Sylvie, her lawyer, arrived at 10 a.m. She was dressed in a sharp, dark navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase. "Good morning, madame," Sylvie said, her eyes bright. "A triumphant night." "It was a successful launch, Sylvie." "Thank you," Isabella said, her voice calm. "Do you have the papers?" "I do." Sylvie clicked open the briefcase and produced a thick sheaf of documents. "These are the preliminary divorce filings. We are filing in New York on grounds of infidelity, with ample evidence." She placed another, slimmer file on the table. "And these are the loan recall notices for Thorne Industries. We have given them 30 days to secure new financing, which, as we know, is impossible. They have no other collateral. Aura Capital will absorb all physical assets, including the Park Avenue penthouse, by the end of the quarter." Isabella picked up the top divorce paper. She didn't read it. She already knew what it said. She just looked at the blank line at the bottom, waiting for her signature. "He tried to call," she said, nodding to her phone, which was on Do Not Disturb, 17 times. "He also attempted to board a flight back to New York last night," Sylvie reported. "Unfortunately, his jet was grounded, pending a surprise FAA inspection that our Washington office arranged, and of course, his first-class ticket on Air France was cancelled." "Payment issue?" Isabella almost smiled. "He can fly commercial." "Indeed, madam, in coach." The simplicity of the end was almost anticlimactic. For years she had dreaded this, the confrontation, the tears, the ugly fight. But by moving silently, by treating her divorce as a corporate takeover, she had excised him from her life with the clean, painless efficiency of a surgeon. There was no drama left to have. He had no power, no leverage. He was just a man. A broke, humiliated man who had made a very bad decision. "And Katerina Petrova?" Isabella asked, a flicker of curiosity. Sylvie allowed herself a small, grim smile. "Last seen at Charles de Gaulle, arguing with an EasyJet attendant about her excess baggage fees. She was attempting to fly to Dubai. The $200,000 in cash she was carrying was flagged by customs. She is currently being detained for questioning." "A loose end," Isabella murmured. "She'll be released. Her talents are not illegal, just expensive." "She is no longer your concern." Sylvie slid a pen across the table. "Madame?" Isabella picked up the pen. She thought, for a fleeting second, of the man she had married, the charming, ambitious, vital man he had been a decade ago. and she felt a small, genuine pang of, not sadness, but pity. He had become a caricature of his own ambition, hollowed out by ego. He hadn't just betrayed her, he had betrayed himself. She signed her name, Isabella Thorne. It looked different now, not a name that was an attachment to his, but a name that stood alone, a name that owned things. "It's done," Sylvie said softly. "No," Isabella said, placing a hand on her stomach. "It's just beginning." She stood, walking to the window. The city was beautiful, her city. She had a company to run, a fashion house to rebuild. And in 3 months, she had a daughter to raise, a daughter who would be born into a world where her mother's name was the one that mattered, a daughter who would never, ever be told to just be beautiful. She would be told to be a Thorne, an Isabella Thorne, and that, Isabella thought, was the most valuable asset of all. And so, the curtain fell on Julian Thorne's gilded life, not with a bang, but with the quiet, decisive click of a pen. Isabella Thorne didn't just get revenge, she redefined it. She proved that the person you underestimate the most is often the one holding all the cards. She didn't burn his empire to the ground. She simply signed the deed and took the keys, all without ever raising her voice. What do you think of Isabella's ultimate power move? Was it the coldest revenge story ever, or a masterclass in business? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Julian deserved what he got? And what do you think happened to Katerina? If you loved this story of drama, high stakes, and sweet, sweet justice, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this one. Click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching.